Okay, so I want to get a few anecdotes down and additions. So, number one, there is a section where you're talking about invention and things that were too complicated for Lily to understand. And so, the story, she's probably, um, I don't know, 6 or 7 or something like that. And we rented a high school musical, one of the high school musical series from Redbox. Remember, they used to have those kiosks at the grocery stores. I guess they still do. And we rented one of those DVDs, and midway through it was skipping or stalling or would stop or wouldn't play. And we rummaged around in the closet and we found a big industrial version of the Skipdr, which is a CD and DVD repair device that I had invented in, 95 when I was just coming out of college. And so we'd sold tons of them, and Lily'd seen them in the stores, but I don't think she'd ever had cause to use one. But we did that night, and we put it in, and you stuck it on a little plate, had gear teeth on it, and plugged it in. It was a big, like, power tool looking. This version was kind of unusual. She wouldn't know that, but this version was a big power tool looking thing in a big hard plastic case. And we took it out of there, and it had these accoutrements, and it had a cloth that you polished with and a piece of felt. Anyway, we ran it through the machine and turned it on, and it had this like pinwheel that spins perpendicular to the disc. Some of this obviously isn't important, but anyway, it had this machine that spins, and it polished the disc, and we polished it off, dried it off by hand. You squirt some fluid on it, blah blah blah, and lo and behold, it worked. And it was really a neat kind of little experience for both of us. And Lily certainly, like, I can remember her after that, mentioning that, boy, it'd really be cool to see one of her products in the store. That she really considered kind of a measure of success. Kind of obviously drawing on what she'd seen from my experience in that. So anyway, I think that's worth including. Okay. Number 2, the dialogue about Grampa accepting the cup. Let's see if I can get away from. So Grampa, she made the cup, and there were many iterations. So we sat for hours, and what would happen is that, we'd put on this Play-Doh-like leg, and we'd put a little band around the cup, as you've seen, and put another, leg, and they'd be kind of uneven or it'd be kind of tippy, and you'd find of the 3 legs that were different, you'd find one of them would be more comfortable than the other, and it would fit in a certain way, and then Grandma and Grandpa would test it, and they'd say, oh, this one's the most comfortable, and then we'd make the other 2 legs like that, and then it'd be too kind of tall, or something wouldn't be quite right, and then we'd change that, and we'd change the angle of the arm, and we'd change the size of the feet, and some had kind of almost sharp nail-like feet, and some had kind of these bigger feet, and we tried that, and they would have different effects on the way the cup sat or didn't sip, or if it was sort of would kind of be more comfortable to use or hold, and sometimes the handles would be too close to the top and it'd interfere with your drinking, and all kinds of different things like that. So we went back and forth, and you'd put it back in the microwave, and then you'd soften up the plastic by getting it hot, and then you'd mold it, and then a minute later it would dry, and eventually we came to a configuration that he felt was comfortable, and so that was kind of the process. And there was a very kind of kindly, oh, thank you, Lily. That's the way my folks are. They're very kind of gracious and not very critical. And So there's a couple different ways to tell this story, but I think it's probably worth telling. And so later in the story, you remember that CNN interviewed Grandpa, and Grandpa was, as we've kind of already written, Grandpa was, you know, surprisingly easy to understand, and his speech was really quite good. And as we wrote, we found out because he hadn't taken his pills, and the pills actually slurred the speech. But one of the things we didn't write in there is that Grandpa told a story, and the story was that when he first got the cups, it was sort of like that Father's Day necktie that you don't ever expect to wear, but you graciously say, "Oh, thank you," and you kind of put it to the side. But he says, much to his amazement, CNN never used this footage, but he said, much to my amazement, I really found it really solved the problem. And after that, I never spilled. And I don't know if the truth is that, and I think Lily knows this too, that Grandpa's a very loyal guy. So it's hard to know if, he really used that just because his granddaughter and son made a cup, and well, that's the kind of cup he's going to use, or he used it just because it really never did spill and it solved his problem, or maybe a little of both. Who knows? But anyway, I think that's kind of a tie-in with that story. Okay, number 3. The kangaroo cup name, and I'm surprised she didn't get this more. This is one of the most well-worn of all the stories. People ask, why is it called the kangaroo cup? And they say, well, my dad and I were in China, and we knew we needed a catchier name than the no-spill cup. So we started to look on the internet for different names, and we talked to our family, we sent messages back and forth. And over a course of a few days, we looked and we found, a number of different names. We found that when we looked up things with 3 legs, we found that the closest thing there is in nature to an animal with 3 legs is a kangaroo, because it uses its tail like a third leg. And so we sent that around the family and asked what everyone thought, and everyone loved the name. And so that's how we got the name Kangaroo Cup.